with great pleasure that I welcome you this afternoon to the National Gallery of Jamaica's Teachers Webinar under the theme, Supporting Art, Experiences, and Learners. Let me extend a special welcome to those engaging with the Education Department for the very first time. Importantly, I begin with gratitude. The success of this event is as a result of a collaborative effort. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the support staff at the National Gallery of Jamaica, who have generously assisted the Education Department in pulling this event together. We couldn't have done it without you. The Education Department's decision to continue supporting educators and educators in training through this initiative is in keeping with a global thrust to include museum spaces as resources for teaching and learning. It is our intention to increase the social, cultural, and historical sensibilities of our students at all levels within Jamaica's education system. The Education Department of the NGJ, through its seminar series initiated in 2014, has remained committed in its mission to support education professionals to effectively incorporate museum resources in lesson planning. This teacher's webinar was specifically designed to provide you with information on how to apply museum resources in developing lesson plans. Also, the presentations will guide you in designing assessment exercises for student visitors through the museum experience. Finally, we will outline procedures concerning research, booking reservations for tours, and other services that the Education Department provides. Throughout the program, please be encouraged to engage us with your comments and questions in the YouTube chat and during the question and answer session. Once again, welcome to the National Gallery of Jamaica's Teachers Webinar. I am Kirt Henry, and I am your moderator. At this time, let me invite Mr. O'Neill Lawrence, Chief Curator at the National Gallery of Jamaica, to deliver his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. November 14 is a special day for us here at the National Gallery of Jamaica. Exactly 46 years ago, this institute was established with the purpose to not only promote our visual culture, but also enrich and enhance the lives of our fellow Jamaicans. Given our more holistic approach to this mandate, and in response to the growing need of our publics, it is fitting that on this, our anniversary, we relaunch our Teachers Seminar. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed the playing field for all of us. The evolving challenges of homeschooling and remote learning are being experienced by most students, parents, guardians, and of course, our colleagues in the teaching profession. Normally, we would be welcoming you into the National Gallery to interact with you directly. But as this is not an option at this time, we're utilizing this digital platform. The Gallery's Education Department has worked tirelessly to ensure that this online experience is just as beneficial as our live presentations. As we continue to support our teachers of all subject areas, not just the visual arts, it is our hope that today's presentations will add to the available resources in your mission to educate our future leaders. I invite you to listen closely to the presentations from Mr. Lyttle and Mrs. Clayton-Wallace, and to take the opportunity, as Mr. Henry had asked, to participate in the question and answer segment that follows. I also encourage you to follow us on our social media accounts, Instagram, Twitter, and our blog, for future offerings and share the link to this webinar once it is uploaded to our YouTube channel. Thank you for taking the time out of your Saturday to join us for this webinar. I return you to the capable hands of our moderator, Mr. Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Lawrence, for your opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to introduce to you the first speaker for this afternoon's session, Mr. Dwayne Lyttle. Dwayne Lyttle is a graduate of the St. Joseph's Teachers College, where he attained a diploma in primary education. His professional focus includes the areas of cultural education, instructional communication, and visual arts instruction. Currently, he is employed to the National Gallery of Jamaica as a curatorial assistant in the education department. Within this department, Lyttle develops educational programs, does research, conducts tours, and periodically executes workshop training as well as visual arts classes for children. In 2016, he co-authored with Monique Barnett-Davison a paper titled Adopt or Perish, an assessment of emerging museum educational strategies at the National Gallery of Jamaica, published in the Museum Association of the Caribbean's online journal, Caribbean Museum. I now invite Mr. Lyttle to deliver his presentation titled Your Lesson Design and the NGJ Consultative Process.
Good day, all. The title of my presentation is, as you had seen previously, Your Lesson Design and the NGJ Consultative Process. During the 15 minutes which I have to present, my aim will be to, 1, define and explain the NGJ's consultative process, 2, discuss the teacher's role in the execution of the consultative process, and 3, explain the use of the consultative process in museum lesson design. As you prepare yourself to listen and make NGJ's consultative process only commences when a potential client of the National Gallery of Jamaica makes a request to use a service which can only be offered by the Education Department. The process then continues when the potential client gains the status of client after receiving a confirmed booking for a relevant service. As a client, the consultative process provides you with access to our exhibitions, publications, and research resources so that you can achieve a variety of informational or educational objectives. As a result of its potential to address both informational and educational objectives, it should be appreciated that the National Gallery of Jamaica's Education Department can use its consultative process to develop both educational and recreational experiences. With that highlighted, let us now move to a definition of the NGJ's consultative process. The consultative process is a series of structured communication engaged in by a representative of the NGJ's Education Department and an individual representing a group, or in some cases, a single person interested in utilizing one or more of the services offered by the Education Department for a recreational or educational purpose. I will say that definition once again for those who are note-taking. The consultative process is a series of structured communication engaged in by a representative of the NGJ's Education Department and an individual representing a group, or in some cases, a single person interested in utilizing one or more of the services offered by the Education Department for a recreational or educational purpose. When utilized, the NGJ's consultative process is administered in 4 phases. Phase 1 is the engagement phase, phase 2 is the confirmation phase, phase 3 is the adjustment phase, and phase 4 is the assessment phase. Today, as I describe each phase, I will do so only in the context of how they are used to develop educational experiences, or more specifically, how they are used to develop museum lessons, delivered in the form of services such as guided tours, workshops, lectures, etc. So let us start with the examination. Let us start with an examination of the engagements phase. It generally involves a potential client making contact with the education department in order to inquire about the services which we offer. Once the potential client is a teacher, he or she will be asked to share with the department representative the educational objectives which he or she would like to achieve. In response, the department representative sends the teacher an email which contains an acknowledgement of the initial discussion and a link to the NGJ blog. This is done to facilitate the client's familiarization with the platform as a source for content and on exhibitions and artists who have exhibited at the NGJ. Attached to the email will be 2 documents which together provide the teacher with detailed information about all the services offered by the education department and how to access them. Hence, the attachments will outline how to confirm a booking, rules, regulations, and service costs where applicable. If the teacher does not have an internet connection, all the key points from the attachments can be shared with him or her via a telephone conversation. Next is the confirmation stage. This phase, next is the confirmation stage, which is phase 2 in the process. At this point, the potential client participates in detailed discussions with the department representative in order to, 1, choose the service type which best helps them to achieve their educational objectives, and 2, agree upon all the arrangements related to their gallery visit. If the interested teacher is able to book a service at phase 2, he or she then becomes a client, as stated before, and then receives a confirmation code. Following that, they would then continue on to phase 3, which is the adjustment phase. Typically, at this point, the teacher and the education department representative would meet at the gallery and play their distinctive roles in the execution of the agreed upon service. In addition, the adjustment phase also allows for minor, and here I emphasize, minor on-the-spot adjustment in terms of content and content delivery. This is an occasional needed action due to unforeseen changes or challenges which may impact a teacher and his or her group, and as a result, needs to be responded to by the education department representative. For example, a teacher and his or her group may experience transportation challenges on their way to the gallery, and as such, arrive late for their appointment. Through discussion and a mutual agreement, the group may be directed to utilize a different service than the one they had originally booked, or alternatively, the teacher may ask for particular content to be emphasized within the originally booked service so as to maximize the time available. Post the adjustment phase is the assessment phase. This can commence after a service is delivered or a day or 2 after its completion. Usually, it involves the education department representative asking the teacher responsible for the group that had participated in the service if he or she feels that the agreed upon objectives were met. Equally, the department representative will also use this phase to find out if the teacher has any desire to extend the lesson post the gallery visit. If the response is yes, then the department representative will recommend publications or resource persons which can aid in that interest, along with online resource material. As a part of that advice, various NGJ resources will be highlighted, but the representative will also make every effort to share with the teacher the most relevant resources, not only from Jamaica, but the region and globally where necessary. Having just outlined the NGJ's consultative process, let us turn our attention to my last 2 points: the role of the teacher in the consultative process and the use of the consultative process in museum lesson design. As you would have noticed in my description of the consultative process phases, the two individuals which generate and maintain the communication of the process are the client and the education department representative. Based on that understanding, it should also be articulated that whenever the consultative process is used to plan an educational experience, the client in that context is a teacher or someone representing an educational interest. Guided by that distinction, let us now look at the role of the teacher. The role of the teacher/educational interest in the consultative process should be seen as that of a consultative partner or professional partner. That is, one who is working together with the education department representative to primarily develop and to some extent assess a museum lesson. This means in practical terms that both professionals analyze, discuss, and agree upon how to use the structure, the duration, and the delivery method of the education department service in order to provide content to students who need to or will benefit from being taught in the museum space. To further our discussion on the professional partner role, it is important to also know that said role has different aspects, and each aspect becomes manifested once a phase of the consultative process is activated. This is why at phase 1 of the consultative process, the teacher acts as a professional inquirer, seeking information on the NGJ and its services. Then at phase 2, the teacher will begin operating as a museum lesson co-designer, and as such will be guided by the information received from the education department representative, along with his or her own in-depth knowledge of a specific curriculum, specific content, and a set of students. Between phase 3 and 4 of the process, the teacher acts as an assessor of a museum lesson, following his or her experience of a requested education department service type. Significantly, the lesson which students receive upon visiting the National Gallery of Jamaica is usually crafted in the main and finalized at phase 2 of the consultative process. At that phase, whichever consultative partner that crafts the lesson delivery approach or lesson plan for the museum lesson is the partner who will play the lead instructional role on the day of the museum visit. Once the lead has been identified, the other partner will then act in a supportive instructional role. If each professional properly executes their role on the day of the lesson, then the students will benefit immensely. At the National Gallery of Jamaica, the education department representatives which deliver the services of the department are called curatorial assistants. These are persons that are popularly called tour guides, but have job descriptions and perform operational tasks which go way beyond conducting tours. As such, at the NGJ, if the curatorial assistant is to perform the lead instructional role in the execution of a museum lesson, a lesson planning framework is often utilized by him or her. This framework is used by the curatorial assistant to organize data collected and decided upon between phase 1 and phase 2 of the consultative process. As a result, the lesson planning framework is divided into two data categories. One category contains data related to the museum lesson strategy, and this framework is used to organize data collected and decided upon between phase 1 and 2 of the consultative process. Additionally, the NGJ's lesson planning framework is divided into two data categories. One category consists of only client data, and the other category contains content related to the museum lesson strategy. Within the client data category, approximately 11 pieces of data are arranged under 3 client identity headings. These headings are as follows. Heading 1 is institution, heading 2 is teacher, and heading 3 is student. The institution heading is used to list data related to the institution at which a visiting group or individual is studying or just affiliated with. For example, a primary school or a university, etc. Under the teacher heading, information related to a teacher or the teachers who will be accompanying the students to the gallery is listed. Said heading can also be used to list information for a teacher who is supervising a student who is doing research. With regards to the student heading, all the data listed there relates to the student or students who will be receiving a museum lesson. With the category titled Museum Lesson Strategy, approximately 12 pieces of data are arranged within that area under 3 museum instructional headings. These headings are the service requested heading, the content heading, and the lesson delivery heading. Under the service requested heading, the book service type is named and its general duration listed. Below the content heading is the general content to be sourced and the specific content to be taught during the museum lesson. Finally, there is the lesson delivery heading. It is beneath this heading that you will find the elements that transform all the services offered by the education department from presentations of information to tools of instructional communication. These elements are educational objectives, start and stop time of lesson, instructional activities, and lesson sequence. Of primary importance under that heading also are the instructional roles which the curatorial assistant and the classroom teacher will play during the execution of the museum lesson. Instructional roles are crucial here, as this directs who is the lead instructor and who is the support instructor during a museum lesson. As even if the curatorial assistant is the one that delivers the main body of content, for example, during a guided tour, the classroom teacher in the group can provide support by A, asking students key questions at different stages of the tour, or B, prompting students to use their worksheets in the presence of a particular work on a tour. Alternatively, when classroom teachers do operate in the role of lead instructor, they generally want to utilize the resources of the NGJ on their own with their students, assisted selectively by a curatorial assistant. In those instances, arrangements are usually made with the curatorial assistant to provide background information at the beginning of a visit or answer questions at the end of a visit. Where a classroom teacher is the lead instructor during the execution of a museum lesson, then it will be the responsibility of said teacher to develop the lesson plan. During all museum lessons, at the National Gallery of Jamaica, classroom teachers are the ones responsible for managing the behavior of their students. Finally, I sincerely hope that this presentation has provided you with a procedural view of how the National Gallery of Jamaica can, through its consultative process, facilitate the development of museum lessons by supporting you and your learners with expertise, advice, and content relevant to our collections, exhibitions, and your curriculum needs. As such, I encourage you to return after the break to learn about a number of services which can be booked at the confirmation stage of the consultative process and utilized to accomplish specific educational objectives while accommodating various learning styles. Thank you so much for participating in the teachers webinar so far.
Mr. Lyttle, for your presentation. I appreciate the way in which your presentation grounded the idea of a collaborative relationship between the museum educator and the teacher on creating the best experiences for our students. But let me ask you, our audience, how can teachers and museum educators encourage critical thinking about works of art in their lesson plan? Again, the question I'm asking is, how can teachers and museum educators encourage critical thinking about works of art through their lesson design. Let us know what you think by sending your comments, your responses in the YouTube chat. At this time, we'll take a 15-minute break, after which we will continue with session 2 of the program. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the National Gallery of Jamaica's Teachers Webinar. A special welcome to those of you who are just joining us. Earlier we had the first presentation by Mr. Dwayne Lyttle on the topic Your Lesson Design and the NGJ Consultative Process. Our presenter for session 2 will be Mrs. Cristal Clayton-Wallace, who will be presenting on the services offered by the Education Department. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Mrs. Cristal Clayton-Wallace. Cristal Clayton-Wallace has been employed to the National Gallery of Jamaica as a curatorial assistant since 2014. She is a graduate of the Mico University College, where she attained a Bachelor of Arts in Visual Arts Education. In 2018, she represented the NGJ at the annual Museum Association of the Caribbean, MAC, conference in Barbados after being awarded a MAC fellowship to attend. Periodically, Cristal has worked as coordinator for the Saturday Art Time program and the Multi-Care Summer Art on the Waterfront program, respectively. In addition, she also writes the NGJ's contributions to the All About Sweet Jamaica section of the Observer's Junior Study Center. Mrs. Clayton-Wallace, I now invite you to deliver your presentation titled NGJ Education Department Services.
Thank you, Mr. Henry, and good afternoon, everyone. Today, I will be presenting on the NGJ's Education Department Services. The main objectives of my presentation are to make the audience aware of the services offered by the Education Department, how these services can be used, and how to make the audience aware of how to access these services. The Education Department of the National Gallery of Jamaica offers a wide range of services to its visiting public. All of these services are designed with the public in mind, and our aim is to offer maximum value for our audience. For our audience to get the best value from our services, they first would need to know what these services are, how they can be used, and how they can be accessed. This presentation will highlight the services that we regularly offer to our visiting public, and these are introductions, guided tours, study sessions, research assistance, as well as seminars and workshops. We will start first with introductions. An introduction is a 15-minute oral presentation that is presented by a member of the National Gallery of Jamaica's education staff with the aim to welcome our visitors while providing an historical overview of the institution, as well as identifying the galleries that are open for viewing to the public. Introductions also focus on how to identify pieces of artworks on display as the public moves through the gallery space. On occasion, we also provide information about how to look at artwork. Introductions also can be done in an extended form if requested prior to the date of your visit. The extended introduction is usually 30 minutes in length and covers the above-mentioned areas as well as any additional area of focus that the visiting group may have. Introductions are generally used by groups who have a limited amount of time in their field trip schedule. The second service that we will look at is guided tours. A guided tour is a movement through a specific exhibition during a fixed period of time, usually between an hour or an hour and a half in length. aimed at making the visiting group more familiar with the content and narrative of that specific exhibition or collection. Guided tours are usually done by a member of the education staff. These tours are generally done by persons who have more time to focus on an exhibition or an area of interest in our collection. For example, the tour to the NGJ is the main item on their field trip schedule, and the other stops or interests are secondary. Guided tours are aimed at fulfilling the group's specific information and educational objectives. Now, here at the National Gallery of Jamaica, we offer two types of guided tours, and these are the forms of art tours and the historical tours. The forms of art tour are guided tours which isolate 2 to 3 art forms and expound upon them. And this is usually done by a member of the National Gallery's education staff. These tours are usually 45 minutes in length, and they focus on defining the art form, showing examples of the art form, showing tools and materials used to create the art form, as well as artists that practice the art form. The second one that we'll look at is the historical tour. The historical tour is a 1.5-hour tour, and it usually focuses on the historical development of visual arts in Jamaica from the time of the Taínos to the early 20th century. Now, the third service that we will look at is our study sessions. These are periods of time set aside by members of the education department to meet with individuals or groups of students, teachers, and researchers to discuss how to define, interpret, and research a topic area or set of topics explored in an exhibition or in an area of interest. Study sessions are booked in advance, and if necessary, advice on how to cite the information gathered is also articulated. The length of time for a study session can vary, and this is usually based on the availability of the education department staff member and the magnitude of the need of the visiting group. These sessions are primarily used by teachers and lecturers who want to immerse their students into the study of a certain area or topic. The fourth service that we will be looking at is research assistance. These are periods of time that are requested by researchers to meet with the education department staff to access support material and information relevant to their specific area of research. The education department helps these researchers to identify, select, and compile the necessary information that they need from publications, catalogs, articles, artist files, and so on. Research assistance is usually requested by students, teachers of all levels, as well as professional researchers, authors, artists, and historians. The fifth and final service that we will look at today is seminars and workshops. These are meetings organized by the education department to engage with a specific group that consistently utilizes the services offered by the department. Such meetings are often organized to promote the proper use or benefit of a particular service or set of services. Seminars and workshops often take the form of case studies, consultation sessions with members of the education department, as well as discussion forums. On the screen, you will see images from our teacher seminar in 2016, and from our Writivity workshop in 2018. Now we're going to move on to how to access the services that we offer here at the National Gallery of Jamaica. 1, you firstly need to give us a call. In your call, you need to set up a date for consultation or a site visit. 2, you need to ascertain whether or not the day you intend on visiting the gallery for your particular service is available. 3, once the date is established, you need to set up a time period with the help of the education staff. And 4, state what topic area or concept you are interested in exploring. 5, state the number of students and teachers that will be present on the day of the service that you are interested in. And 6, state the age range of the students that will be present. 7, what types of services would you be interested in, or rather, what types of resources will you be interested in? Books, articles, catalogs, artist files, a research person, artworks, or artifacts. 8, think about and communicate the objectives that you want to achieve with the visit and the use of the service. And 9, think about and communicate the mode of evaluation that you intend on using to assess your objectives. Also, please state or identify whether or not you will need a member of the education department staff present as you achieve or to take part in your evaluation. I would like to thank you very much for joining me in my presentation. I now hand back over to our moderator, Mr. Henry.
Thank you, Mrs. Clayton-Wallace, for your presentation. You know, as you presented, I reflected on the social role of the museum. Now, let me ask our valued audience, what do you think is the social role of public art museums such as the National Gallery of Jamaica? At this time, I invite you to view a short video clip on museum education, after which we will commence our question and answer segment of the program. At this time, I'll invite you to send your questions and we will respond to those questions.
The National Gallery of Jamaica has had its education mandate since its beginning in 1974, established as a part of its mission to promote our artistic heritage for the benefit of future and present generations. That means that the NGJ must use its collections as a medium for connecting people to the value of artistic practice and innovation in Jamaica as well as the wider Caribbean. Additionally, we believe that this will help to encourage appreciation as well as critical engagement of art for all who see it. As such, having an education department as one of the NGJ's operational units has proven to be integral in gradually encouraging the development of a more diverse and socially integrated audience in these regards. Museum education at the NGJ takes the form of workshops or other public forums, as well as some specialized guided tour formats, such as the forms of art tours, which is targeted mainly to students at the primary school level. One of our main approaches is to establish close relationships with educational institutions and professionals in order to identify the needs we are best resourced for and develop programming to address those needs. More recently, the NGJ Education Department has been working very hard to engage learners beyond the physical museum site by developing more online initiatives.
have come to the question and answer session of this afternoon's program. At this time, myself, Kirt Henry, Mrs. Cristal Clayton-Wallace, and Mr. Dwayne Lyttle will be responding to your questions that you will be posting in the YouTube chat. As you send us your questions, kindly state the name of the panelist to whom your question is directed. Also, if you have general questions that are not related to the teacher's webinar, feel free to email us at info@natgalja.org.jm. That is info@natgalja.org.jm. Welcome, Mrs. Clayton-Wallace and Mr. Lyttle.
Hi, Mr. Henry.
Now I want to begin, thank you. I want to begin with a question that I will pose to both of you. And the question is, why is it necessary to include object-based learning in subject areas such as history, social studies, and the visual arts? And I pose that question to you because the nature of the teacher's webinar, although we're an art museum, what the services that we offer does not only cater to our teachers.
Right.
Do you want me to repeat the question?
Ladies first.
Repeat, all right, perfect. So why is it necessary to include object-based learning in subject areas such as history, social studies, and of course, the visual arts?
Okay. It is exceedingly important to include object-based learning in these subjects because for our students to have a good grasp of the material that they're being taught, it is good for them to see and handle the things that they're talking about in the subject. So for example, if we're talking about yabbas, it is good for them to see what a yabba is, to assess the size, to see what the material it is made from, and so on. And so having them interact with or even look at an actual yabba can further concretize the lesson for them. So it is not so much of an abstract thing that the teacher is talking about. It becomes more concrete in their minds.
Thank you, Mrs.
Yeah, I would basically support Mrs. Wallace in what she's saying and just elaborate on it a little bit. What Cristal just said could be applied to various types of museums. And she gave the example of a yabba, which, for example, in the context of the Institute of Jamaica, which we are a part of, if you go to, say, the Craft Museum, People's Museum of Craft and Technology in Spanish Town, which is not open at the moment, and you want to learn about traditional craft, you want to learn about traditional lifestyle, and so forth, seeing a yabba in its context and learning about it, and where possible, because in museums, not all objects you can touch, but where possible you can engage with holding the yabba, seeing how it is made, and so forth. It adds to your knowledge, or it actually helps you to build knowledge about the yabba. So as Cristal said, it's just this process of concretization. But in addition to concretization, which is more emphatic for the learner, you can also look at it from the point of view of the teacher. The teacher has more access points to carry the students to particular types of knowledge. So if we were to take that example and what I just said a little while ago and apply it to the gallery setting. For example, when we do our forms of art tours, one of the things that we are trying to stimulate in those tours is not only to be able to identify what a painting is as different from a ceramic, as different from a sculpture, but we also want to generate specific types of questions. What type of material is this work made out of? Where do you think the artist would have had to go and get the material? How did the artist then process the material to turn it from this piece of wood or this piece of clay or a set of paints in a tube to the artwork that we're looking at? And as a result of asking that process set of questions or stimulating that process thinking, you would then have to look at what are the tools, what are the materials that the artist would have had to use. So essentially, that's basically a way of trying to answer that question.
Thank you, Mr. Lyttle. And I'm happy you mentioned specific type, students asking specific types of questions. And I know that there has been a global thrust to include material culture. One aspect of it may be visual arts, you know, in the whole process of teaching and learning. And students may be asked also to ask questions about self and questions around identity, because once they enter the museum, they see particular works of art which may identify with them. So that is very important in terms of engaging objects within lesson plan.
And it also emphasizes, which is what is important in terms of artistic communication, that and you can use material to transform it into an object to articulate a set of ideas, a set of sensations, a set of emotions. So in terms of to tie in with your identity point.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Lyttle. Which also, this is an exciting question, which also speaks again about the social role of the art museum in generating or promoting historical, social, and cultural sensibilities, not only of our children, but of our public, wider public.
Definitely.
I have a question for you, okay, Mrs. Clayton-Wallace. How, after listening to your presentation, this question came to mind. Now, how do you suggest persons prepare for an educational visit to the National Gallery of Jamaica?
All right. So, Mr. Henry, that is a very important question. That's a very important question. Now, for you to prepare yourself and your students for a visit to the National Gallery of Jamaica, for educational purposes, you first will have to know what we have open on display, what we have up on display. What time does the gallery open for visitors? We are currently in the time of COVID, and we are close to the public, unfortunately. But we understand why this must be so. But aside from that, preparing for your visit, give one of us a call. State to education representative, I want to visit the gallery. I'm thinking about this particular day, and I'm thinking about this particular time, and we will let you know whether or not that day or time is available for your visit. And also, we will help you to fine-tune and work on those objectives that you want to meet. Because we want the gallery visit to be something that is impactful for your students. Definitely. And we don't want it to be wasted time. We want it to be time that is spent promoting learning as well as enjoying the experience.
And I would just want to add, as it relates to the point that Cristal was making about this being a COVID period, a lot of educators are not aware that we have social media platforms, and also that on those social media platforms there's content. Now, if they consult with us first, maybe they will realize that the objective or the question that they would like to answer, the content that they want to develop, basically a lot of that information can be found on our YouTube page, or it can be found, as more than likely, on our blog. Many times teachers are asking about information about artists. We have a lot of artist profiles on our blog. The artist profile will not only give you information, or biographical information about the artist, but it will also give you an image of what the artist looks like in some instances, and in many instances there are examples, photographic examples of the artist's work within that post. So many times, you know, people, especially within this current period of COVID, people are thinking that there's no way for me to access the services of the gallery. But there is content that is online. Equally, by talking with somebody in the education department, there are other resources online that we can direct them to. There may be solutions they are looking for in terms of how to communicate something using their devices to the students in the format that they're using now, that we can also give advice on. So essentially, the preparation, once we're open, we take in some of what was stated in Cristal's presentation. Equally, as I was saying before, some of what I just mentioned in terms of looking at our online platforms is also important in consultation with us in the department.
Thank you, Mr. Lyttle. An interesting point you made there, and I will use this opportunity to jump over to the chat, to the YouTube chat. I have a question, in a way you've answered, but I'm still going to acknowledge the question. The question is, how will this museum experience, because we did speak about a museum experience, so how will this museum experience be executed during this time of a pandemic?
Well, the museum experience has many parts to it, or significant parts to it. And at the moment, some of those aspects, because we're close to the public, persons would not be able to engage with. But there are other elements that once they come in consultation with us, we could aid with. So again, where there are images of exhibition spaces or works that we have online, we could direct them there. If there is potential for us to live stream something to persons, we could also do that. Sometimes we can give preparatory information that could be used once we have been opened. So there may be things that we can give that they can directly access now and then build upon when we're open in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Lyttle. I think that is it for our question and answer section of the program. But before we go, I want to encourage our audience on YouTube this afternoon to, if you have other questions that you would want to send to the Education Department, you can do so through our email at educate@natgalja.org.jm. Thank you, Mrs. Clayton-Wallace, and thank you so much, Dwayne, for being here.
You're most
Thanks
welcome.
for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Invite our senior curator, Mrs. Monique Barnett-Davison, to come and give a few reminders to our audience about how you can further engage with the National Gallery of Jamaica.
Hey, good afternoon, Mr. Henry.
Good afternoon.
And good afternoon to our viewers. You know, it's just so important that we are doing this right now because there have been, I mean, based on the experiences that myself and my colleagues here and yourself too have had, there's a lot that can be done in terms of enlightening educators as well as learners about the ways in which you can use the resources here at the National Gallery to enrich and enhance those experiences, and that's exactly why I'm here. I'd like to provide our audience, our viewers, future visitors with some reminders of some things that you can do to continue that engagement with us. Now, the first thing that I want to highlight is that at the end of this webinar, I would like you, the viewers, to click down to look in the description box. You will see 2 links to evaluation forms connected to these sessions. You'll notice that there will be 2 of them. One will be directed to teachers and teachers in training, and there will be a second link for evaluation forms, but only for other participants. So that will be for persons who don't fall in the category that I stated earlier. I would also like to remind you that if you have not already done so, please watch the preview video to this webinar that we posted a few days ago entitled Education Through the Museum Experience. It really sets the background for a lot of what Mr. Lyttle and Mrs. Clayton-Wallace spoke of earlier, as well as some of the points you raised, and also the points raised by our audience as well. So the video is available on our YouTube channel. Whenever you have the time, please go and watch it again. And as you had mentioned before, if you have any questions coming from that, feel free to contact the Education Department where that's concerned. The third thing I want to highlight is that I would love if all of you would subscribe to the National Gallery of Jamaica's YouTube channel and ensure that you click on the notification bell to ensure that you don't miss any of our content. And in addition to that, you can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We also have a blog at WordPress. So there are lots of opportunities for you to keep up with us and never miss out on anything that we're doing. I mean, it's been mentioned the situation that we're in as it regards to being closed because of the pandemic, but that doesn't mean that the engagement has to stop because of that. So call us, email us. We are looking forward to working with you, and as always, we really appreciate the support.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Barnett-Davison.
You're welcome.
Our audience, we have come to the end of the National Gallery of Jamaica Teachers webinar. Before we close, I want to extend our sincere gratitude to individuals and organizations who have given their time, expertise, and resources to make this event possible. I would like to thank the Institute of Jamaica for their continued support. I would like to thank the Ministry of Education, Youth, and Information, and also the Jamaica Teachers Association for their assistance in communicating this webinar to their members. I would like to thank the in-house staff here at the National Gallery of Jamaica, but in particular I want to make special mention of our Chief Curator, Mr. O'Neill Lawrence, and also Ms. Shauna Lee Tai and Ms. Joelle Salke for their technical support. I want to thank the Education Department, supervised by our lovely Senior Curator, Mrs. Monique Barnett-Davison, headed by myself, and also, last but by no means least, our curatorial assistants, the two presenters you saw this afternoon, Mrs. Cristal Clayton-Wallace and Mr. Dwayne Lyttle. I also want to thank Stephanie Channel for her lovely work done on our graphic services. I also want to thank the SR Music and Entertainment Factory Company Limited for providing us with technical support this afternoon. I also want to thank Mr. Robert Hall, who has designed our fabulous set for our teachers webinar. Last by no means least, I'm sorry, I have one more. I want to thank our volunteers, Kershaw Wallace and Ashley White, for assisting us in our teachers webinar. Last but by no means least, I want to thank you, our valued audience, for your continued support. Please engage us in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for viewing the National Gallery of Jamaica's Teachers Webinar. Stay connected to the NGJ as we continue to support you.